right, as part of Shelf-tember, I reserved one of those 3-pound rolls of ground beef. The other three I separated into bags. I showed it in a previous video, and I froze those. But I decided to make up a bunch of meatballs and probably some taco meat or something like that, just to have it handy and on hand. I went through my refrigerator and I found a few things that I could use that kind of needed to get used up. I did use a little bit more of that Parmesan because you guys know I like Parmesan cheese. I just put it in my little mini food processor thing and I ground it up a little bit. I found 3 mozzarella cheese sticks that really needed to get used up. They were past their best by date of May of this year, which, you know, I tasted when they're just fine. I used the ends of a loaf of bread, the heels, both heels of some bread, and I used a lot of that bread tonight for dinner. I made French toast and eggs for dinner because I'm trying to use up some of the eggs. Well, in addition, I have this, I believe, is that leftover from the egg bake. Yep, this is the leftover eggs from the egg bake. So I'm going to use that instead of an egg, just because I'm not making any more tonight. I will probably tomorrow, but not tonight. And I'm going to let that kind of soak in my bread a little bit. Let my bread soak in it and mix this up before I start adding all my seasonings and stuff. So I'm going to let that kind of bind together a little bit here for just a minute. And I went through and I found a few other things that, well, at least one other thing I want to use parts of it a lot of people throw away, and that is I have some mushrooms in there that I purchased earlier this week. I'm going to use the caps, the tops for something else, but these are the stems. So I'm going to grind these up. I like to put mushrooms in there. It helps my meatloaf and things like that stay tender because they release a lot of juices. And I have a half of an onion. And I'm telling you, this is the strongest onion I have ever cut in my life. I felt like I was getting pepper sprayed just by cutting it in half. So I'm going to grind those up. I'm going to add those, and I'm going to go through, oh, in my refrigerator, I guess I didn't really realize I still had it. This is some more cottage cheese that I had. As you guys know, I like to use cottage cheese to bump up some of the nutrition. So I'm just going to, no, I better not do that. I'll put it in after. I'll grind it up separate to add to my meatloaf. And then I've got some dehydrated spinach that I dehydrated this spring. I'm just going to put a good pinch in there because you know spinach, a little bit goes a long way when you dry it or cook it. And the guys are not real happy about that part of it. But, you know, I got to add vegetables where I can. And I add some salt to my mixture and some, I think I'm going to add some paprika because I do like the color it gives my meatballs and the flavor. You know, I don't follow recipes, guys. I'm just kind of making this up as I go. I have some garlic powder. I have some fresh garlic. Well, it's not fresh. It's jar stuff from the store, but I'm going to add some of that. I'm going to add some onion powder. I'm not going to add any specific seasonings like Italian seasoning or anything. That way I could sauce these any way I like. So there you go. That's what I'm going to add. I'm going to get my garlic out of the refrigerator and add that as well. So I'm going to grind this up off camera because you don't need to listen to that. And then I'm going to put my meatballs together. All right, I wanted to go through my cabinet one last time. I found some pretzels that I bagged up, but they got stale. So I'm going to grind these up and throw them in there. It's not really going to affect the flavor much. It'll add a little bit of salt and flavor to it. So it's not like it's going to taste like pretzels anyway. So I'm going to grind those up and add it. And then I'm going to start with about 1.5 pounds of meat. This might be a little bit too wet. If it is, oh well, I'll just use some more of that 3-pound roll. If I have to use the whole thing, I don't care. I'll just add some more seasonings to it and make it work. All right, I put my pretzels in here, so I'm going to mix those in. Like I said, it's really not going to, I mean, there wasn't that many pretzels. It's not like it was a whole bag. but it will absorb some of that moisture, and the more moisture you add, they can be a little hard to cook, but I'm going to bake these in my toaster oven anyway, so I don't have to worry. I'm not going to pan fry them or anything like that. They'll stay nice and beautiful. And now I'm just going to grab my meat and start adding that. Okay, I'd say that's close to half that log there. And I'm going to need, I did wash my hands just in case. I really hate touching this. I don't normally use this fatty of ground beef. I prefer like a 90% lean because it kind of never comes off your hands, but I guess we'll just do it. So I'm going to break this up a bit. They really make it kind of in a pretty heavy roll here. It's really clumped together. Break that up. I'm going to mix it up. And then I just set it down somewhere. I have those little mini cookie scoop. Where did I put that darn thing? That I'm going to, oh, it's on my stove. That I'm going to use to help form my meatballs. That way they're all pretty consistent in size. They bake better that way. They're going to be small, and I want them that way. Just makes it so I can use them however I want. And I could use them. I think I'm going to make like maybe some Swedish meatball style. I could make, with spaghetti or an Italian sauce. I was thinking maybe like a Korean beef mix. Sounds really good to me. Or some kind of Asian style. Oh, that's my oven, my toaster oven. So that's why I wanted to make a neutral, because I'm thinking that way whatever sauce I add to it will really enhance the flavor. Sometimes with my meat, I will add, if I didn't have like, leftover bread or something like that, you could use leftover mashed potatoes. It's a good way, meatloaf and meatballs are a good way to use up little bits and pieces of things that you don't want to waste. And with the price of food right now, you don't want to waste anything. So I try to do the best I can in economizing. You guys know I always try to not have any food waste, for those that know me well. But that's why I started thinking about the meatballs, because I was like, what could I make that I could turn into anything, especially now that I found beef that I can afford, which, like I said, it used to be, $15, over $15 for 3 pounds. That's cheap in my area. I mean, even at $15 or over $5 a pound. They said I prefer to buy a little bit leaner beef, but when I find a deal like this, I wish I had the extra cash with me. I would have bought more than 4 rolls, but it is what it is. I watched so you guys know, at least at our Walmart, because I asked. It doesn't hurt to ask the meat people. I'm not going to need any more meat in this. Probably a little bit, hair over half that roll. So there's a little over a pound and a half. But I asked the meat department when they do the markdowns on their meat. And on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, their leaner meats will be on their best buy date. I don't want to call it expiration date because it's not like a timer goes off and it goes ding, I'm bad. But I watched it, and they do it on the night shift prior to that day. So, like, for example, today's the 30th of August. They mark this down, the night shift, when people came in on the 29th for the night shift. They'll start marking them down. And I guess they do have, at least at ours, they have people who work overnight and do that stuff. So give me a second here. I'm going to go wash my hands because that's why I don't like to do this. I can't find my gloves because my bathroom's a mess still. Okay, while I'm getting ready to form these meatballs, I put my leftover ground beef into a large pan, and I took those onions and chopped those up. Holy cow, I have never smelled anything that strong. And I knew I had some red peppers in my freezer to use up, so I'm going to add that to my meat while it's cooking over here. And I can reuse this bag to put my onion skins in because I'm going to be making soup fairly soon. And okay, so this is where my little cookie scoop comes in. I'm just going to get a fairly, uniform size, and I just put them on whatever. I'm not going to be using this to chop anything else until after I clean it. So I'm just going to make, this is like a tablespoon and a half size approximately, I believe. I'm going to make a bunch of little balls here. And after I make quite a few, I'm going to just round them off good. Put them on my baking pan. So I'm just going to continue to do this, but once I get to that point, they're not tiny meatballs. Some people make really big ones, like quarter cup size. I don't quite do that big. I like about this size, sometimes even smaller. But I'm just going to round these off, fill up my baking pan here, and I'm going to throw them in the oven at 350 degrees until I make sure that they're cooked through. I'm going to start at 25 minutes, probably roll them over so I get browning on all the sides, and then see how much longer that takes. But we're just going to go ahead and finish these meatballs. I'll give you a peek at them while they're cooling off and get ready to go in the freezer. Okay, so my meatballs are cooking, well, half of them, because I didn't want to crowd the pan. This did have quite a bit of grease, I noticed, when I was cooking up this meat for the tacos. And I had a bunch of tomatoes I cooked up a couple of days ago, and I'm just using this strainer, this sieve, and I'm pushing through my tomatoes as much as I can. I just didn't feel like pulling out my KitchenAid. I have a strainer thing on it, and it'll just be one more thing for me to have to lug around today. So I'm just going to do this with my tomatoes, push them all through here, and I will be canning whatever I get. But since I have the tomatoes, I'm going to add a bunch to my meat. This ladle's about a cup, so I'm going to start with that because, again, it adds some extra nutrition. And I'm going to get my taco seasoning out of my cabinet here. And I made it way too strong last time, so I'm going to grab my measuring spoon this time so I don't overpower it. I think a packet of taco seasoning is like 3 tablespoons, but I'm going to start with 1.5. And after I get it cooked in, I'll see how it tastes, because I can always add more. Make sure I get those brown bits off the bottom, because that's where all your flavor is when you cook your meat. And if I need to, I can add some more tomato sauce, because I can always cook it down, which I think I will do. So I have a good flavorful couple of dinners, probably 2 or 3 even for us. I'll measure it out once I get it all made. So here's another meal that's going in my freezer. Couple meals. Might save one for later this week. I don't know, because I like to meal prep too. Just makes it a lot easier. And that way I can eat one and then have one for later in the year. All right, so there is my taco meat. I'm just going to simmer this for a little bit, let all those flavors come together. Of course, check it, make sure I like the seasoning in it. And those are the last things I'm going to make today, because it's getting late today. It's almost 9 o'clock at night, and they have to cool so I can put them in the freezer. But all right, it took about 25 minutes for my meatballs here, and I'm going to take them off of this tray. You can see there's quite a bit of grease on here, and I have a little rack over here. I'm going to let them drip off onto some paper towels so I can start my next batch. And my taco meat, fajita meat, whatever I want to use it for, is ready. I don't think I'm going to bag that up tonight, because I have some extra corn on the cob. I'm thinking of cutting off and adding some to part of that meat, but we'll see how it goes. I made a total of each sheet, I'll show them to you real quick. Each sheet will have 22 meatballs. So I made a total of 44 meatballs. Things like meatballs, I put in the freezer. Once they're cool, I'll freeze them solid, and then I will vacuum seal them. That way they don't get all squished when you suck all the air out. So these are going to have to cool, then they're going to freeze, and then I'm going to vacuum seal, and I'll figure out how much I get, and I'll let you guys know. All right, so I got 3 bags of meatballs. So I can make 3 big meals out of this. I could do 3 different flavors. And oh, I tasted one of the meatballs. They turned out so delicious. This is going to be one of my favorite recipes from now on. Anyway, there I go. I'm getting ready to use the taco meat or fajita meat, whatever you want to call it, next. And I'll let you know what I decide to do with that in an upcoming video. I hope you're enjoying my shelf timber and have a wonderful day.